Hello, my fellow Americans. Guess what? There's a Nazi running for Congress. Many of you have heard about this already, I'm sure. His name is Arthur Jones, and he is running for the Republican nomination in the 3rd Congressional District of the state of Illinois. And I use the term running loosely because he's not actually running for the Republican nomination in that race in anything but the most basic sense, because he's the only Republican in the race. The good news is, it's a heavily Democratic district, so he's virtually guaranteed to not actually win. So the odds of Illinois actually electing a Nazi to Congress are fairly slim at this point. But nonetheless, the fact remains he is on track to claim the Republican nomination for that congressional seat unopposed. The Republican Party, both in the state of Illinois and nationally, has condemned Jones's candidacy, has completely disowned him. Hey, the Nazi's not with us. In fact, in the Washington Post a couple of days ago, there was a statement by a spokesperson, actually the chairman of the Illinois Republican Party. His name is Tim Schneider, and he said the Illinois Republican Party and our country have no place for Nazis like Arthur Jones. We strongly oppose his racist views and his candidacy for any public office, including the 3rd Congressional District. Strong words from the chairman of the Illinois Republican Party against the candidacy of Nazi Arthur Jones. But even stronger words came from another representative of the Illinois Republicans. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times, the Illinois Republican Party executive director named Drew Collins, who told the Chicago Sun-Times that the party was exploring options to oppose Jones's candidacy, including supporting an independent candidate or a write-in candidate or something like that, just to make sure that someone other than Jones is on the ballot for Republicans in the district to vote for. And then he says, Nazis have no place in our nation's democracy. And to that end, we will continue to vehemently oppose everything Mr. Jones stands for. Again, very strong words, but I just can't help but ask myself, is that really true? Is it really true that the Illinois Republican Party and the Republican Party nationwide opposes everything Mr. Jones stands for? I had to satisfy my curiosity about that, so I did something that probably got me on a couple of watch lists. I went to Jones's campaign site, Art Jones for Congressman, and as you can see, it seems to have been imported from about the year 1998. It's not a very well-designed website. I personally am not a web designer, so perhaps I have no room to speak, but it doesn't look like an overly well-put-together website. And you can see in the menu along the bottom of the banner, there's a charming little section here toward the end called Holocaust, ? He's a Holocaust denier, of course. But let's look at the issues. The issues. Where does Art Jones Nazi stand on the issues? Well, he's against illegal immigration. He is opposed to sanctuary cities. He's opposed to amnesty for what he calls illegal aliens. He wants to make English the official language. He wants to repeal the income tax and replace it with a flat 10% sales tax. He wants to repeal Obamacare. He is pro-life and anti-gay. He's against multilateral trade treaties. And he's against diversity. He's against racial and ethnic and cultural diversity. So other than the blatant racism, what exactly that Art Jones stands for are Republicans opposed to? Because if you take out the anti-Holocaust conspiracy theories and you take out all of the overt signifiers of his racism and his Nazism, which are all over this website, if you take those out, this could be the campaign website of any other Republican candidate. My question is, if Republicans like Drew Collins or Tim Schneider or others who have condemned Jones's candidacy are really serious about condemning and vehemently opposing everything Mr. Jones stands for, Does that mean that they're willing to oppose the parts of their own party that attract men like Jones to run for office on their tickets in the first place? Because it would be completely unfair to say that all Republicans are Nazis, but it must surely be pretty close to true that all Nazis are at least leaning Republican. Of the two major parties in the United States, which of the two do you think a Nazi would be most at home in if that Nazi decided to seek elected office on a major party ticket? A few might roll the dice and say, fuck it, I'm going to run as a Democrat. But for the most part, I think they would find themselves much more welcomed within the Republican Party. And hey, if they can tone down the overt Nazism, they might actually get pretty far. So if Republicans, like those who are condemning Arthur Jones, really want to be taken seriously when they say we oppose everything he stands for, then I think the first step in that process is to actually oppose everything that Jones stands for, including, and most importantly, the things that Jones stands for that they stand for too, and that they have proudly stood for decades. A Republican who really wants to oppose men like Arthur Jones and have that mean something has to reconcile himself to the fact that his party, the Republican Party, provides a warm, welcoming, nurturing place for people like Arthur Jones. And if you want that to change, then you have to not only oppose his rabid Nazism and his anti-Holocaust conspiracy theories, but you have to oppose the things that your party supports that feed the resentment and the hatred and the ignorance that allow people like Arthur Jones to exist in our political environment in the first place. You have to take a good hard look at the way your party talks about immigrants. Not just so-called illegal immigrants, but immigrants in general, particularly immigrants from non-white countries. You have to accept and own and do something about the fact that your party just elected a man president who ran on an anti-immigrant platform, who had as the cornerstone of his campaign building a wall along our country's southern border to keep brown people out. And also tried as one of his first orders of business once he assumed office to ban Muslims from entering this country. You have to own that. You can't pretend that that didn't happen, or that somehow those things aren't racist, or they don't have negative, harmful effects on people of color or religious minorities. You can't stand as a member, not just a member, but a representative, a spokesperson, an executive in the Republican Party, the anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ Republican Party, and say, we condemn Arthur Jones and everything he stands for. No, you don't. You may condemn his outward Nazism, but honestly, let's be frank, that's mostly a public relations problem, isn't it? The Republican Party thinks that it can just condemn people like Arthur Jones and then go right on pushing the kind of agenda that the party has been pushing for as long as I've been alive. And people are finally starting to catch on to that. People are finally starting to notice, hey, wait a minute, maybe it's not a coincidence that of the two major parties, the white supremacists tend to vastly prefer the Republicans. Maybe it's not a coincidence that Donald Trump got Nazis and other flavors of white supremacists and white nationalists in this country more excited than they had ever been for a mainstream political candidate. Maybe there's a reason why people like David Duke will tweet effusive, worshipful praise of Donald Trump after he gives a speech, especially if it's a speech that mentions immigration. Maybe the Republican Party needs to take some ownership of that. Maybe it's not that the Republican Party is being invaded and overrun by these opportunistic Nazis. Maybe it's that the Republican Party has opened the door and been inviting these people in all along. And people like Arthur Jones are just some of the less skilled examples of people who are taking advantage of opportunities that the Republican Party has been extending to people for a very, very long time. It's not funny, but it almost makes me want to laugh when I see Republicans, and not just rank and file registered Republican voters, but people who actually professionally work in the Republican Party at the state or national level, executives in the party who have a hand in crafting the message and the agenda of this party, who are responsible, who have their fingerprints on the racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, anti-gay, anti-trans platform of this party. People like that who pretend that they're just blushing and they're so outraged at the idea that a Nazi like Arthur Jones would run for an office in their party. Why, it's just terrible. Oh, of course we have nothing to do with him. Don't you, though? One of the excuses offered by the official Republican representatives and spokespeople in response to the Jones candidacy is to be very quick to point out that, hey, he has nothing to do with the party. He hasn't been endorsed. He has no official relations with the Illinois Republican Party or the National Republican Party. He filed and he ran as a Republican candidate, but we have nothing to do with him. When I read that sounded very familiar to me. So I went back and I rewatched that video from CNN where Allison Camerata interviewed Jones from a few days ago. And that's the exact excuse that Jones gives when she says that he's a Nazi. He says, hey, I haven't had anything officially to do with any formal Nazi party for however many years. Hey, I'm not a Nazi. I don't think most people buy that excuse from him because it's not his official party affiliation that makes him a Nazi. It's his ideology. It's his agenda. It's the policies he supports. And it is the repugnant intolerance in his heart that comes out of his mouth. Those are the things that make him a Nazi. And it's those exact same things that make him a Republican.